Setup for a game of All Manor of Evil begins with placing the Manor board in the center of the table. The Manor board contains 4 locations from which players will be stealing relics from the Manor of H.P. Lovecraft. These locations include the attic, the basement, the foyer, and the library. If playing a 5 or 6 player game, you will also add the vault location to the manor. In this particular example for the how to play, we are going to be playing a 3-player game for demonstration purposes, so the vault will simply be returned to the box. Next, select 1 green god, 1 blue god, and 1 yellow god from the pool of available gods based on the number of players, and place them above the manor board. Then add 1 awakening token to each of the 3 gods. Next, we take the manor deck, and we divide it into 4 roughly equal piles. We will select one of these piles, and shuffle in the 2 clock cards that could come out to determine the end of the game. Once the clocks are shuffled into a portion, one of the 4 stacks, we shuffled them into this stack. The other decks will be individually shuffled and stacked on top of the 4th stack so that the bottom 4th of the manor deck contains both clock cards. Fill each room of the manor by drawing cards one at a time from the top of the manor deck until all rooms are full. Then randomly determine a first player, or give it to the least sane player, and give them the lantern token to designate their first player status. For the purposes of our first turn, the player down here will be our first player, so we will give them the lantern token. Give the first player and the player to their left each 2 madness tokens, and all other players will receive a single madness token to start the game. Give each player a skeleton key to start their cache of stolen relics from the manor. These relics, these skeleton keys, should be placed face up in the starting position and will be the starting card for each player's cache. Give each player a set of 4 action cards. These 4 action cards are identical among all players and include the actions Pilfer, Deceive, Study, and Inspect. Based on the number of players in the game, you will create a roll deck consisting of roll cards that are appropriate for the number of players that you have. Certain rolls are good for larger player counts, and vice versa. From that roll deck, you will distribute 1 roll card secretly to each player. Players should keep these rolls secret from the other players, although they may be throughout the course of the game required to reveal their rolls to 1 or more players as the game goes on. But here at setup, each player should keep their rolls secret. Roll cards are distributed to determine how the player would prefer the game to end. Some rolls wish for 1 or more of the gods to awaken. Other rolls want the 2 clocks to come out of the bottom of the manor deck. You are now set up and ready to play All Manor of Evil. All Manor of Evil is played over a number of rounds, each round consisting of the following steps: select actions, resolve actions, and then the end of the round. The game will continue until one of the following occurs. Either the second clock is drawn from the manor deck, which ends the game immediately, or 1 or more elder gods are awakened. An elder god awakening gets checked for at the end of every single round. We begin with the select action phase. Each player will simultaneously select 1 action card from their hand and place it face down in their play area. When you place a selected action card face down, any face up card in your play area will be returned to your hand immediately. Please note that during the first round of the game, there will be no actions to return to your hand as players have not played an action at this point. Once players have all selected the action they're going to play, the player actions are simultaneously revealed and then will be resolved in initiative order. Once actions are revealed, the first thing to check for is, did any player select an action with the same initiative value? Or rather, did they select to do the same action? In the example that we have here, our first player and our second player both picked the Deceive action, or the number 2 initiative. Any players that selected the same action are each given 1 madness token to add to their madness. Had this player also selected the Deceive action, all 3 players would have received madness, but in this case they did not. It is also important to note that any duplicate actions that are selected will grant madness. So these 2 players in this example both picked Deceive. If we had a 4th player who had chosen the Pilfer action, players 3 and 4 would have received madness tokens for their match as well. Actions are then resolved in initiative order from lowest to highest. Let's take a look at the various actions and then resolve what we have here on the table. The actions that a player has available to them include Pilfer, which is a #1 initiative, so anyone who chooses Pilfer is going to do their action first. Pilfering allows you to add 1 madness token to any room in the manor, and then you must steal a relic from either the foyer or the library. The second option available is to deceive. This is an initiative 2. When you deceive, you exchange the top relic of your cache with any relic that's in the manor. This does not trigger relic abilities. And then you must steal from the attic or the basement of the manor. The third action is to study. Study allows you to lose up to 3 of your madness tokens, and then you must steal from either the attic or the library. And your fourth and final action is inspect. Inspect allows you to reveal the top card of the deck and steal that card if it is a relic. Then you must steal from the basement or foyer. This is a great action for burning through the manor deck if your secret role wants you to have the second clock come out. Looking at the actions that were selected, Player 3 selected Pilfer with initiative value of 1, and players 1 and 2 each selected Deceive with an initiative value of 2. That means Player 3 is going to get to take their action first. And as a reminder, Pilfer allows them to add a madness to any room in the manor, and then they must steal a relic from either the foyer or the library. They will take a madness token and add it to any room in the manor. Looking at their opponent's cards, which are now public information, they can see that Player 1 must steal from either the attic or the basement, and Player 2 must also steal from the attic or the basement. So they're going to take this madness token, and they're going to place it in the attic location. They then must steal from either the foyer or the library. So let's take a look at the cards that they could steal. In the foyer, we have the Amber Statue. The Amber Statue is worth 1 madness and 1 value, and also allows the person who steals the relic to add or remove an awakening token from any god. The Rite of Carcosa that we have, it allows you to duplicate the effect of the action card that you played this round, so you could take the duplicate action again. It's worth 1 madness, but has no value to it, which is important for in-game scoring. This particular player is going to steal the Amber Statue. Now, when you steal a relic, you take it out of the room that you're stealing in. It goes on top of your cache, so in this case, we're going to cover the skeleton key, and it's going to activate the ability. So we're going to add or remove an awakening token. This particular icon up here means it's to the yellow god, so we're going to have to add the awakening token to the yellow god. Now, we can either add one or we can remove one, and that is going to be based on our player's secret role. Player 3 over here was dealt the secret role of the Zealot. So at the end of the game, if a god was awakened, and that is what triggered endgame, they will get to lose all of their madness tokens. So this is a role that wants one of the gods to awaken. So in that case, they will add an awakening token to Hastur, the yellow god. We then move on to resolve the other player's actions, again in initiative order. We have 2 players who have initiative 2. Ties are broken by the player who has the lantern token, and if the player who has the lantern token is not tied, whoever is closest to the lantern in clockwise order gets to break the tie and gets to take their action first. So we have our first player here who is going to deceive. Deceive allows them to exchange their relic that's on top of their cache with any relic in the manor. Now, it's important to note that taking an exchange action does not trigger the ability of the relic that was stolen, nor do you have to take the madness tokens that were in that room. So this player is going to take their skeleton key. We're going to exchange it with the ancient tome that is worth 4, has a value of 4, but no madness. By doing the exchange action, we do not have to take the madness token. And then this player must steal from the attic or basement, and they're going to steal from the basement to avoid taking this other madness that's here, and also stealing their skeleton key back. And they are going to steal the warding stone. Now when they steal the warding stone allows them to add 1 madness to any room in the manor. The warding stone now takes top position on their cache, and player 1 knows that player 2 has to steal from the attic at this point because the basement is now empty, so they're going to add another madness token to the attic. Player 2 now resolves their turn. They also chose the deceive action, and they're going to simply exchange the skeleton key with this Rite of Carcosa. And then they must steal from the attic, meaning they're going to steal the skeleton key that player 1 left. That takes over the top of their cache. And they will also gain the 2 madness tokens from the attic. This is now the end of the resolve actions phase, and we now move into end of round. At the end of the round, the first thing we do is we check to see if any of the Elder Gods have 6 or more Awakening tokens on them. At this point, we have Cthulhu with 1 Awakening token. Dagon has 1 Awakening token up here. And we have Hastur with 2 Awakening tokens. None of the gods have 6 or more, so no god is currently awakened. The next thing that we do is we need to refill the empty rooms of the manor from the top of the manor deck, starting with the leftmost empty room. So we're going to draw the top card and put it in the attic, and do the same for the basement and the foyer. Finally, for the end of round phase, we pass the lantern 1 step clockwise so that we have a new first player. It is important to point out that the actions selected by each player in the round will remain face up on the table, so there's a little bit of information for their opponents to work on. For example, this player knows that this player will not be pilfering and that this player over here will not be deceiving in this round, because those actions are already taken and you only have 1 of each action in your action deck. We now enter a new round where players will select an action face down. When players select a new action, they return the face up action back to their hands immediately, so that there is only 1 action card showing on the table face down. This helps alleviate confusion as to which card is being played, which card was newly revealed, and so on. Players then reveal their rolls and check for any duplicates. In this case, this player chose Initiative 3 to study, and both players here and here chose the Inspect action, so each of those players will gain an additional Madness token to add to their supply. The player down here has the lowest initiative. They have an initiative of 3 since there are no 1s or 2s that were selected. This ability allows them to lose up to 3 Madness tokens. So we will take 3 Madness tokens away, return them to the supply, and then we must steal a relic from the attic or the library. Stealing from the library is going to steal a skeleton key that has no Madness value, which is good, or can be good, depending on the roll, and is worth 1 value, or 1 point. If we steal from the attic, we're going to steal the Rite of Rely, which is worth 1 Madness. The ability on this rite is to exchange this relic for the top relic of another player's cache. And that will not trigger, exchanging that does not trigger the ability of the newly swapped relic. So I could steal from the attic, and instead of placing it on mine, I could swap for the Amber Statue, which, while it is worth 1 Madness, is worth 1 point. This rite did not have a value, so I can exchange. Play then moves to the next player in initiative order. We have 2 players that are tied with 4s. This player has our Lantern token, so they get to do their Inspect action first. Now, Inspect is to reveal the top card of the deck and steal that card if it is a relic. So we're going to reveal the top card from the deck and steal it if it's a relic. And it is. We have the Amber Tome here. This is going to add 2 Madness to the player, but give them value of 3. What we're going to do as well is it's also going to trigger the ability. So we're going to add an Awakening token to the Yellow God. So we're going to add a 3rd token to the god. And then as a special ability, it says to add an additional Awakening token to this god if it has 3 or less. The Yellow God has 3 Awakening tokens, so we're actually going to add a 4th Awakening token to the Yellow God. This now goes on the top of the player's cache. Now they must steal from the basement or foyer. The foyer has a Jade Idol, which is going to add a token to the Yellow God, yellow or green god. So we have the option of stealing the Jade Idol, which will add an Awakening token to either the green or the yellow god, and it's up to this player to choose which god that is. It's also going to give them an additional Madness as well as a value of 2. If we choose to add to the Obsidian Amulet here, we'll be able to add an Awakening token to any of the gods, 2 Madness, and a value of 3. So more points, but more Madness that is there. Looking at this player's secret roll, which we have not done yet, we see that this person is the burglar, which means they will double the value of money as well as Madness of their most valuable relic in their cache if the second clock comes out. So this particular player does not want any of the gods to awaken, so they will simply choose to steal the Jade Idol, and we're going to add an Awakening token to the green god, since the yellow god is getting dangerously close to awakening. We now move on to our other player here, who is going to reveal the top card of the manor deck. If it's a relic, they can steal it. We have the Obsidian Statue, so that's going to be stolen. This is for 2 Madness, 1 value. We are going to add or remove an Awakening token from any of the gods, yellow, blue, or green. Remember, this player wants the yellow god to awaken, so they are going to add an awakening token to the yellow god, taking them to 5, and then they must steal from the basement or foyer. So they will steal the obsidian amulet that is in the basement. This is going to allow them to add an awakening token to any of the gods, and they're going to go ahead and add a 6th token to Haster. We are now at the end of the round, and we enter the end of round phase for our second round. At the end of the round, the first thing we need to do is check the awakening status of any of the gods. We have Cthulhu with 2 awakening tokens, Dagon with 1 awakening token, and Haster has 6 awakening tokens, meaning that Haster has awakened. Since we have an Elder God that is awakened, we must redeem or resolve its special ability. Haster's special ability is that remaining players will score the madness value of each right in their cache instead of the dollar value. So rights that are in players' caches will be scored a little bit differently for end-game scoring. So we must now resolve and reveal the player cards. So players will reveal their roles publicly. So this player will now reveal that they are a zealot. Our player down here reveals that they are a mystic, and then we have our player over here that reveals their burglar status, or their burglar role. Beginning with the player who has the lantern and proceeding clockwise, players will resolve any actions on their role cards that are related to a god awakening. In the case of the burglar, we saw that they get to double the money value and the madness value of the most valuable relic in their cache if the second clock was revealed. That is not the case here, so they don't get to do anything extra at this point. The zealot gets to lose all of their madness tokens if a god was awakened. Since there was a god awakened, they will take their 2 madness tokens and simply remove them back to the supply. And then our final player down here, the mystic, they will score value if they have the fewest madness tokens. They have no madness tokens. This player has no madness tokens. And this is just tokens, not the printed values on the relics themselves. So these 2 players are tied. So this player does have the fewest tokens. So they will get to score the additional 4 points. So this is their scoring 4 points if they have the fewest tokens. So they'll get to score 4 extra points on there. Once we've resolved the reveal effects from all of our player role cards, we look to see if the god has an awakened effect. Some of the gods will be printed on there with an awakened effect. Haster just has a scoring effect. But for example, with Dagon here, Dagon says awakened, each player shuffles their cache and removes their top 2 relics from the game. So this gets rid of randomly 2 of your relics if Dagon had been the god that had awakened. Cthulhu also has an awakened ability that reads the player with the least madness gains 5 madness. So Cthulhu makes you a little bit more mad. The next thing we have to do is resolve any madness effect on the awakening god. So that would be in the case of Cthulhu, being able to acquire extra madness in that case. All players will then count up their total madness for their total madness tokens, as well as the madness that is in their cache. So for our player down here, they have no madness tokens, and their cache consists of a total of 3 cards and a total of 2 madness. So our player here has 2 madness. Moving over here, we have a player who has a total of 5 madness. So we got the madness values here of 2, 2, 1, and 0. So they have 5 madness. And then we look across the table over here, and our player here has 2, 4, 6 madness tokens, plus another 4 madness in their cache. So they have a total of 10 madness. The player with the most madness is devoured. So this player here is devoured and will not get to score their points to determine a winner. Players will then move on to scoring. We're going to resolve any scoring effects on the gods. So this is where Haster comes in. The remaining players will score the madness value of each right that is in their cache instead of the value. So we look through and we have one person here, we have 1 right in this cache for our player. This is going to score 1 point instead of the 0 that it was worth. So total, this player has 3, 4, 5, 6 points to end the game with. This player is going to do the same, looking to see if they have any rights in their cache, and they do not. So they are simply going to score the point values. So we have a 4, 5, 6, 7, plus they get the 4 points for having the fewest madness tokens, taking them to 11. The player with the most value, this player here, is declared the winner. The other way that a game of All Manor of Evil could end is if the second clock is revealed from the bottom of the Manor deck. If that were to happen, the game is immediately over. You do not resolve any further player turns. If the second clock were revealed in the middle of a player resolving relic actions, that player does not get to finish their turn. The game ends immediately when that second clock is revealed. Players will reveal their roll cards as normal. Beginning with the player with the lantern and proceeding clockwise. You're going to resolve any game end effects on the roll card. We are then going to total up madness. Again, the player with the most madness will get devoured and does not get to score their total value of the remaining relics. And then from the remaining players who were not devoured, totaling up the scoring from any bonuses from their roll as well as the total value in their cash. And again, the player with the highest value is declared the winner. The two-player game of All Manor of Evil is a head-to-head contest between two thieves that actually has them alternating turns of controlling H.P. Lovecraft himself. Now, in a two-player game, while it is unlikely, it is possible for H.P. Lovecraft to defeat both players. To begin setup for a two-player game, we're going to randomly select one of the 4 H.P. Lovecraft roll cards. Now, these rolls all have information as far as how Lovecraft is going to behave at the end game. Players will not know during the game which version of Lovecraft they are playing. So we simply shuffle up the 4 roll cards of Lovecraft, randomly select one, and it will be placed face down in the play area for players to alternate control of Lovecraft as the game goes on. The other 3 remaining rolls are simply returned to the box. We randomly determine a first player. We give them the Lantern token and 2 Madness tokens. And then the second player will receive 1 Madness token to start the game. All other setup rules are followed according to the regular rules of the game. So you're going to select an Elder God of each color, green, blue, and yellow. We're going to fill the library, again, with relics, starting with the leftmost room. So we fill the manor with the relics that can be stolen for the two-player game. And H.P. Lovecraft will start with 0 madness at the beginning of the game. The two-player game of All Manor of Evil is also played over a series of rounds that consist of selecting actions, resolving actions, and checking for end-of-round conditions. Selecting actions works exactly like the first game, exactly like the multiplayer game, where players were going to each select an action and play that action face down in front of them. Rolls will then be flipped over and revealed, just like in the basic game, and then are resolved again in initiative order. Resolution of actions is exactly the same as the multiplayer game. So we resolve these actions in order of initiative. So we have a Deceive with initiative of 2, and we have an Inspect with an initiative of 4. So our 2 is going to take precedent, so they're going to exchange the top card of their relic, the top relic of their cache, with any relic in the manor, and then they must steal a card from either the attic or the basement. So the basement has a nice juicy 4 there, but it allows another player to add an awakening token to any god. So it could be bad for me to do so. However, if I take my skeleton key and I do the exchange, like we talked about before, you can do the exchange, that does not trigger that relic's ability. So I get 0 madness, and I now have a 4 value or a 4-point relic that is here in the Ancient Tome. I now must steal from the attic or the basement. So I can either steal the skeleton key that's in the basement, or I can steal the Forbidden Tome that is in the attic. Stealing the Forbidden Tome is going to allow me to look at another player's roll card, which can be very powerful. And H.P. Lovecraft does count as a roll, so this would allow me to look at his roll card to be able to determine which version of H.P. Lovecraft we are playing. So I'm going to steal the Forbidden Tome. Now, the Forbidden Tome also has me take 2 Madness tokens, so I will be taking Madness to do this. So I'll be taking 2 Madness tokens from the supply and adding them to my supply. But then I get to look at H.P. Lovecraft's roll. And of course, as this player is going to be the only one that looks at the roll. You're not going to show it to the other player. And in this case, we pulled the Protector. So H.P. Lovecraft is going to gain 5 if the second clock is revealed. So Lovecraft really wants to burn through this Manor deck over here in order to score those extra 5 points. This player now has that information, while this player does not. And that could be important for the Lovecraft resolution, which we'll get to in a second. The next player in turn order will resolve. Our second player here, with their Inspect action, they will reveal the top card of the deck. So we reveal that card, and they steal it if it's a relic. And it is a relic. It is the Ancient Mask. So this gets stolen, adds 2 madness and 4 value, and I have to show my roll card to another player. So this gets stolen, will go on top of the cache, and I have to show my roll card to another player. Now again, HP Lovecraft counts as another player, so I can simply say, here you go, Lovecraft, here's my roll, and not show my opponent my roll card. That is a perfectly legal move, and that's the one we're going to do. Now that I've done that, I now have to steal from either the basement or the foyer. The basement is a skeleton key, which will give me 1 point and no madness, or I could choose to steal the obsidian tome from the foyer, which will give me 3 madness and 3 value, and I will be adding an awakening token to a god of my choice, and then I get to add an additional awakening token to any god that has 3 or less awakening tokens. So we're going to do that, because that's just kind of crazy and chaotic. So we're going to do this. We're going to choose to add a token to the yellow god, and then it says to add an awakening token to any god with 3 or less. So all 3 gods are going to gain an additional awakening token added to their card. And that now concludes the resolution for the players, and we move on to taking turns for Lovecraft. After both players have resolved their actions, the player in possession of the lantern will take a turn for Lovecraft. And they'll do that in the following way. Lovecraft will steal a relic from any of the rooms at the player's choosing, and they will add that to their cache. So I could steal, as this player taking a turn for Lovecraft, I could have Lovecraft steal the skeleton key, or I could have them steal the Ancient Mask. The Ancient Mask is to show your roll card to another player, so that would allow Lovecraft to show his card. Would also give him more madness, though. So we could steal this, we add to the top of Lovecraft's cache. The player in charge of the lantern now resolves this relic's ability as if they were Lovecraft. So any abilities that target other players include the player with the lantern as well as their opponent. So this says to show your roll card to another player. So Lovecraft can simply, knowing that this player already knows the roll, simply show this roll card to this player, and that would resolve the relic's ability. We then move to the end of the round, where we check to see if any of the gods have awakened. We have 2 awakening tokens on Cthulhu, 2 on Dagon, and 3 on Hastur. So none of the gods have awakened. We then pass the lantern to the other player, and play will proceed as normal, just that back and forth. So again, we're going to select roll cards face down, reveal and resolve, stealing relics from the manor. We also have to refill the manor during the end of round, starting with the leftmost empty room. We take turns selecting actions, resolving actions, and then the player with the lantern will take a turn for Lovecraft. This is going to continue until either the second clock comes out of the manor deck, or one of the 3 gods is awakened, or both gods, or more than one god gets awakened, in which case, again, all players would lose. At the end of the game, after each player has revealed their roll card, you reveal Lovecraft's roll, just like he's another player, during the game end. You will resolve Lovecraft's roll ability during the appropriate game end step. Lovecraft can be devoured for having the most madness. If Lovecraft is not devoured, though, so let's say this player ends up with the most madness at the end of the game and they get devoured, this player must still have more value from their cache than Lovecraft has in his cache. So it is possible for Lovecraft to win. Again, the player with the most value after a player has been devoured is the winner. When playing a 5-player game of All Manor of Evil, a 5th room is added to the manor, the Vault. The Vault is a special room that is used when playing with 5 or 6 players if you have the deluxe version. The Vault is treated like a normal room that a player can steal from regardless of which action card they choose. So whether you choose action 1, 2, 3, or 4, you can always steal from the Vault. So it gives you a 3rd option. However, unlike other rooms, the Vault has 2 special rules. Anytime the Vault is empty, you immediately add a relic to it off of the top of the manor deck. Also, whenever a relic is added to the Vault from the deck, you also add a madness token to the Vault. So that becomes a very high risk but potentially high reward room located in HP Lovecraft's manor.